Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to discuss the poem called The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock by T.S. Eliot. So actually T.S. Eliot's full name is Thomas Stearns Eliot. This poem, which is entitled as The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, was first published in the magazine called Poetry, a magazine of verse. And this was published in that magazine because Ezra Pound insisted the magazine editor named Harriet Monroe to publish this poem. Then this poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, was published in Eliot's first collection of poetry named Prufrock and Other Observations in 1917. And the original title of this poem was Prufrock Among Other Women. So this poem is called as one of the quintessential works of modernism because it marks a complete departure from the conventional poetry of the 19th century and even the poetry of the pre-war wars of the 20th century. And it marks entirely a new beginning in the field of poetry. One important thing about this poem is that the title of this poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, comes from Rudyard Kipling's poem, The Love Song of Herdiel. Though the title means The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock refers to the poem as a love song, but actually the poem is anti-romantic in tone. It reflects on Prufrock's failure as a lover. This poem also shows the fragmented and tormented physique, emotionally and physically sterile character of the prototypical modern man whose name is J. Alfred Prufrock. So here Prufrock is an old person who is going to propose a young lady, and he is in a dilemma that whether the lady will accept his love or not. And Prufrock here is shown also in DCC, means he procrastinates over a fact that he should do this or not, this type of thing. Okay. So friends, as this poem is quite lengthy, means total 140 lines are there in this poem except the epitaph. That's why today I will discuss the epitaph and from line number 1 to line number 79, and I will discuss in my next session the rest of the lines. Okay. So now let's start explaining this poem. So as you can see that at first we have the epigraph which is written in Italian. Actually this epigraph is taken from Dante's Italian poem Inferno, Canto 27. Actually Inferno is a medieval Italian poem which traces a pilgrim's journey through hell. And in hell the pilgrim meets various sinners and they also narrate their stories. Okay. So here in the epigraph you will find 6 lines, and these lines are told by one of the people imprisoned in hell named Guido da Montefeltro. So actually in hell, other pilgrims asked Guido why he has been punished. So in these lines, Guido is telling the pilgrims that he feels free to talk about his sins now because he knows that he is in hell and no one can ever return from hell to earth. So here Guido is relaxed with the thought that the pilgrim who will listen to his stories, they will never or the sins that Guido committed to anyone in earth because they are in hell. So friends, now you are thinking that why T.S. Eliot brings out Guido's thought from Inferno in the epigraph of The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. So actually this poem, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, is a dramatic monologue. So here actually the speaker or Prufrock address the reader directly about his secrets. So here basically Prufrock is gonna reveal his secret or reveal his life stories or what kind of man he is. That's why maybe T.S. Eliot brings out the reference of these lines from Inferno. So now let's start the line by line explanation of this poem. So at first we have line number 1 to 12. Here in the first line you will see that Prufrock is addressing someone. He's saying that let us go then, you and I. So here you means perhaps the unnamed companion who is with Prufrock, and basically it is clear that here you means also the readers. So now let me read from line number 2. When the evening is spread out against the sky like a patient etherized upon a table, let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask what what it is. Let us go and make our visit. So friends, it is clear that it is evening time. So friends, it is clear that the setting is in evening time. And here the poet shows a picture of city life. Okay. Here Prufrock tells the silent listener or the reader to start a journey in this evening time, which is looking like a patient, like an etherized patient who is laying in the operation table. So then Prufrock is saying that let's go in this evening time through the half deserted streets, which is marked by sleepless cheap hotels where people stay only one night, and they will find also the murmuring sound of people, and in the hotels and sawdust restaurants you will find also oyster shells. Here oyster shells means brothels or prostitutes. So now from the line number 8, Prufrock is saying that the streets follow each other like a tedious, like a boring argument with a corrupt intent, with a malicious intention. Then Prufrock tells the listener or tells the reader that it seems that these streets are asking a serious question. But don't ask me what is the question. Let us go and make our visit. So from these lines, it is clear that Prufrock is visiting somewhere, maybe to propose the lady whom he loves. So now we have line number 13 to 22. In the room, the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. So maybe here Prufrock is in the hotel, and there he saw some women who were talking about Michelangelo. Then he is saying that the yellow fog that rubs its back upon the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stand in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, and made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fall asleep. So here he talks about the fog which is yellow. So friends, actually it was set in the autumn season, and we all know that in the autumn the leaves of trees turned yellowish color. So that's why he's saying that the fog also turned as the color of yellow. And now Prufrock is saying that the fog rubs its back upon the window glass, and the yellowish smoke also rubs its back upon the window glass. So here actually the yellow fog or the yellow smoke can be seen as a cat who also licks, who also rubs its back upon its master or upon the window glasses. We can say that. So now Prufrock from the line number 17 is saying that there was too foggy outside that it covers everything, or it seems that the fog, the smoke with its tongue licks the window glasses and everything. The fog are also found hang upon the drains and pools. The fog in it takes the dust particles from the chimney, and that smoke passes from the terrace of the houses. So thus the whole atmosphere is seen as a soft October night in which the curly smoke spread all over and gradually leads everything to sleep, and thus it shows the gloomy evening of the autumn. So now from the line number 23, Prufrock is saying that, and indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before the taking of a toast and tea. So here Prufrock is saying that there is enough time. There is time for the yellow smoke to roam around the street, rubbing its back upon the window glass. There are also time to make yourself ready to meet with the person. So here basically he is convincing himself as well as the listener that there is still time to say whatever he wants to say to his beloved, as well as there is still time to stay in indecisiveness. Okay, so here he is not in haste to propose the lady, and he is again saying that there are also time to do scenes or murders and to create new things. There are also time to do all the daily works, and there are also time to drop a question to your mind, and there are also time to take 100 decisions and think about the decisions. And also Prufrock is saying that there are also time to take revisions about the question which I'm gonna ask you. Then in the line number 35 and 36, he's saying again that in the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. And then from the line number 37, he's saying that, and indeed there will be time to wonder, do I dare and do I dare? Time to turn back and descend the stair with a black spot in the middle of my hair. They will say, how his hair is growing thin. My morning coat, my collar mounting firmly to the chin, my necktie rich and modest, but asserted by a single pin. They will say, but how his arms and legs are thin. Do I dare disturb the universe? In a minute there is time for decisions and revisions, which a minute will reverse. So, so here Prufok is saying that actually there is time to ask myself that is there any courage or dare in me to speak to my word. So here Prufok is saying that in reality there is time to ask myself that is there any courage in me or is there any dare in me to speak about my words, to speak about my feelings before her. So now this is the time to turn back and descend in the staircase. Now this is the time to be ready and to meet her. So in the line number 40, he's saying that in the middle of his hair there is a black spot. That's why he's thinking that he's worrying that the women obviously will say that his hair is growing thin. And now Prufok is describing his look that he is wearing his morning cloth. Its collar comes to his chin and the tie is also rich, which is asserted by a pin. So now Prufok is ready to meet her with this classy look, but again he is worrying that instead of focusing on his look, the women will say that his arms and legs are thin. So now this is clear that Prufok is an old man. So then Prufok is questioning himself again that does he have that much courage to ask the lady something, or does he have that much courage to tell her about his feelings? Because asking her something is equal to disturb the universe for Prufok. And then he's saying that the decisions which he make after a minute they gradually changed. So after this in the next lines he's saying that for I have known them all already, known them all. Have known the evenings, mornings, afternoons. I have measured out my life with coffee spoons. I know the voice dying with a dying fall beneath the music from a further room. So how should I presume? Here Prufok is saying that he knows the other women already. Even he knows the evenings, the mornings, the afternoons means the nature's activities. He drank so much coffees by sitting in the coffee stands of this hotel or of this restaurant. And here, whatever the other women are saying, which cannot be heard properly because there is another music coming from the other room, and because of that music, the ladies' songs are disappeared. And then again, he is questioning himself that does he have that much courage to put forth his feelings to the lady whom he loves? So now in the next lines, he is saying that, and I have known the eyes already, known them all. The eyes that fix you in a formulated phase, and when I am formulated, sprawling on a pin, when I am pinned and wriggling on the wall, then how should I begin to spit out all the butt ends of my days and wishes, and how should I presume? Here the eyes means the persons that are present in the room. Prufok knows them all, and he knows that the person who are present in that room will continuously look at him or stare at him. And thus that's why Prufok is saying that he will not able to tolerate their staring. And now he is quite conscious about the fact that the time when he will stand there in front of other people or in front of the women that are present in that room, then his condition will become like an insect, as if he is an insect and he is pinned in the wall and therefore he is struggling helplessly in the world. So that's why in the next lines he's saying that how should he put his feelings before her? He can't freeze other ladies or he can't freeze other persons. That's why he's saying that his life becomes a butt of cigarette which people throws after smoking. And again he is worrying that how to express his own feelings in front of the lady whom he loves. So now we have the next lines Here Prufrock is saying that, and I have known the arms already, known them all. Arms that are braceleted and white and bare, but in the lamplight down with light brown hair. Is it perfume from a dress that makes me so disgrace? Arms that lie along a table or wrap about a shawl. And should I then presume? And how should I begin? So here Prufrock is saying that he knows the arms which are white uncovered and which has bracelet. He knows the arms, okay. And when he saw the arms in the light, he saw that her arms, means the lady's arms, were covered in light brown hair. And the smell of the perfume from her dress distracts him. Then he's saying that the lady relaxes her arms by placing them to a table and her hands are covered with shawl. Then again he is struggling over the fact that how would he confess his feelings to the lady and how will he start conversing with her to tell his feelings to her. So friend, this is what Prufrock is saying from line number 1 to 79. And from line number 80 to 140 I will discuss in the next session. So thanks for watching this video.